And we got to court that day, and her attorney motioned for me to come up to the front. And he said, Judge Chatham has a deal for you. He says he'll give her time served on this charge, but you have to take her home with you for 6 months. And I was like, I don't want to take her home with me. But I'm so glad I did. Yeah. And she's doing really well, too. Yeah. She's working down here in Hernando. She got custody back of one of her children, got married to a really nice young man. And they're doing really well, too.
Each day at Wesley Meadows is a new opportunity to serve older adults and reimagine retirement living. It is the heart of their mission that inspires their team to provide the kind of fun atmosphere and care residents would want for themselves. Experience the warm spirit and faith-based difference of Wesley Meadows. Call 662-429-2070 and schedule your visit today. Hello and welcome to The Real Hernando, presented to you by Wesley Meadows, Retirement Community, and SRP Studios, a digital content production agency. This podcast spotlights Hernando's organizations and community leaders by sharing their stories and what led them to serve the community. The Real Hernando is currently seeking new business sponsors to partner with, which will support the growth of this platform, and in doing so, will create a brighter spotlight for the Hernando community as a whole. So if you want to learn more on how to become a sponsor, there's a link in the description on how to sponsor. Fill out that form. It's just giving me permission to follow up with you. You're not agreeing to anything. So if you can click into that, we'd greatly appreciate it. And you can follow The Real Hernando at therealhernando.com for all channels, social media platforms. I am your host, Derek, and today we are spotlighting Precious in Pink, a jail ministry and faith-based organization that works with justice-impacted women to offer them a safe, supportive place to stay after release from jail. The mission of Precious in Pink Jail Ministries is to provide a stable, Christ-centered environment for women who are committed to changing their lives. Contact Precious in Pink Jail Ministry at 901-849-3562 for more information on their programs and admissions requirements. My guest today is Ann Lunceford, Director of Precious in Pink. Ann, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It's good seeing you again, isn't it?
Yes.
You've already been up here once speaking with my friend Coach Camp from Motivate with Coach Camp podcast, who by the time your interview publishes, he's just recently been on this podcast again. So when I reached out to you and told you everything and what I wanted to do, then you're like, I've been there before. I was like, really? And then I'm like, oh my God, you have. So thanks for coming up in here and telling your story again. Hopefully we can take it in different areas here, but I'm grateful for your time here to join this podcast because I just really think it's an amazing ministry and an important one. So thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's talk about, let's do a quick, a snapshot of what this industry is. Ministry is, and then let's learn a little bit about Ann too. All right, so I'll give you the floor and explain to the audience a little more in detail what Precious in Pink does.
I go to the jail every week and have Bible studies with the women and get to know them and try to help them at that point to decide that they want to change the way they're living. And if they are truly interested in doing that, then there's an application process and an interview, and they're allowed to come and live with me.
Yeah. Lucky them.
Lucky them.
And we were just talking about, before I get off the rails here, when a woman decides, yes, I want to change my life, and applies, what's that next thing? And they actually stay with you, correct?
They do stay with me.
Yeah.
They when they are released, whether it's from going to court and they get released there or they bond out, however they are released from jail, I tell them, I'm the only phone call you make.
Yeah.
You call me, I'll come pick you up, and they go straight to my house. Mm-hmm. Or if they are involved in drug court, they have to go straight to the drug court office, and we get checked in there, and they go home, and we just start new life, doing things the right way.
You're right there with them from
Right
word
there.
go. Otherwise, they'd be homeless, right?
Some of them
Or they have to go back to
where they were.
a really bad situation, right?
Yes.
What are some of the stories that you've seen that were really impactful to you? And I'm sure plenty. It's a loaded question, but how many? Let's start there. How many women do you have right now?
I have 9, and number 10 will be here on Wednesday.
And you were telling me you're in a 500 square foot studio apartment, right? No, I'm just kidding.
I feel like that sometimes.
I'm sure. Well, I would imagine even a good sized house, 9 people fills it up quick.
Yes.
And now you're looking at a 10th one. So
Well, I have 14 beds.
okay. So do you have like bunk beds and
We have bunk beds,
Yeah.
and they have to, of course, share rooms. But I have a 6-bedroom house and 4 bathrooms. Wow. So it's a pretty good sized house.
And right here in Hernando, right?
Right here in Hernando.
Oh, God love you.
Yeah.
Hernando's great. So where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in Louisville, Mississippi.
Okay.
And my parents moved to Memphis when I was just a little baby. And so I grew up in Memphis, graduated from Whitehaven High School, went to the University of Memphis when it was Memphis State, and worked there, and got married and moved to Covington, Tennessee. And then I ended up migrating back down here to Mississippi. So
Best move you ever made.
it is. It's the best move I ever made.
I'm from Maine originally. If you would have told me 15 years ago that, Derek, not only are you going to live in Mississippi, but you're going to love it, I'd have been like, where's Mississippi? No, not that bad. But yeah, it is interesting, and how much I love it here. So how long have you been in Hernando?
2 years.
Oh, okay.
I had been living in South Haven for about 30.
And so Precious and Pink has been going on. For how long have you been involved with Precious and Pink?
15 years.
Okay, so now the women had been going to South Haven.
They were living with me in my personal home with me and my husband. And I started doing that before I moved to Hernando.
Oh, so the place now in Hernando, is it still your personal home?
No.
Okay.
Dr. Jessica Cox and I bought it together to use just strictly for the ministry purposes. But I do live there.
Okay. But do you still have your place in South Haven?
No, I sold it.
Yeah. Well, so it's just still your
So I'm
place to
basically
live.
homeless.
Well, no, you're there to influence, right?
Yes.
And set boundaries. So what does it look like? What is a day in the life for a new woman that just got out of jail and is looking to change?
Well, we do a lot of Bible studies. I just wanted to learn how to have a normal routine. Get up time, have a quiet time, learn how to read. That's a lost art today. They're not allowed to have cell phones. They don't have internet access, can't get on the computers. You've got to learn how to fill up your time with healthy, good things. And, just even if it's some of them, just learning how to play Monopoly together, something we don't do anymore.
It's a social aspect.
Social, yes.
Yeah.
So, get up and, somebody usually fixes breakfast, and by that time we have somebody coming to do a Bible study, or we have counseling. Tuesday mornings, Crossroads Counseling comes and does group therapy with them. So we have that going on too, and we go to Celebrate Recovery meetings, and we go to church. And matter of fact, we're going to a Celebrate Recovery meeting tonight. So
Where at?
At South Point Church.
Okay. Years ago, I went to one out in East Memphis. I eventually figured it out. I had my issues too.
We all have issues.
So okay, well, as they're going through the day, do they have chores? I know you
have
said
chores.
that someone will cook breakfast, but what do the chores look like? What's a day like for them?
Well, it's just that normal, keeping up with laundry and washing dishes and mopping floors and cleaning bathrooms. And, of course, I'm on 5 acres. We have chickens. The chickens have been fun. Not everybody's ever been around a chicken, and some of them are scared of the chickens.
Honestly, I mean, I think that's funny, but you know what? I don't think I've ever been in a chicken pen either. Like, if a chicken started running straight to me, I'd be a little weirded out.
Well, some of them are.
Yeah.
But we have to learn how to take care of the chickens.
And the eggs, right?
And the eggs. And we have a dog, a very large dog, that's useless. But everybody loves her. And we have 2 cats, and they're pretty much useless too. But, it gives them pet therapy, I guess.
Sure. Look, I mean, I'm a dog guy, Yeah, there's something about having, even if you're alone and having a pet, you don't feel as alone, And they have personalities, they're part of the family. That's what happens.
They are, and the girls enjoy that, but somebody has to feed and water them and, take care of them. So, there's that element involved too. And
are they allowed to leave?
No.
Like they don't have cars. They
No.
don't have,
No.
They can't just take off and have a curfew and be back by 9 because that
No.
could be
Yes.
problematic, right?
They have to, everything's pretty much a group activity. There's times when one of them will have a doctor's appointment or has to go to court or probation or, drug court or wherever they've got to go. And, we might just take that one. I'll have
Someone hang back and watch. Yeah. Well, obviously, yeah, you got to take the responsibility to make sure these ladies do all the proper things they need to do when it comes to the law, right?
Yes.
So that must be a lot to keep track of.
Trying to make sure that, they realize that we're going to do things the right way and not the wrong way.
Yeah.
I have told the girls, there's a lot of them in the jail that are in there for violating probation, contempt of court, which in essence means they just didn't show up.
And just not showing up.
Yeah,
it's easy to show up.
It's easy to show up, and I've told them, I said, just look up stupid in the dictionary because your picture's right beside it.
Mine was probably there a few times.
Well, if you show up, they're going to work with you.
Yeah.
If you don't show up, they're issuing a warrant for your arrest.
Yeah.
So
they're coming for you. Yeah.
So,
and that just is what it is, death, taxes, and warrants, right?
it's about just learning to do the right thing.
Yeah. Do they have a curfew in terms of bedtime? Do they have a certain downtime? They have to
10:30.
10:30. Yeah. Yeah. And it's keeping that schedule, right?
Yes.
And
they're usually up by 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. Some of them like to sleep a little later than that, but I have some that get up at 5. So.
Yeah,
that's okay.
I'm a bad sleeper too. Sometimes I'm up at 5. Sometimes I can't wake up, and before I know it, it's 9 on a Saturday, ruining my day. So obviously, you're feeding these women.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because I would gather now we're talking a situation where are you feeding them all on your own dime, or you must have donations? You have volunteers. Being this being an organization and a ministry, do you get aid for that?
I go to Heartland Hands Food Pantry, and they give me a lot of food. They're very generous with me. But I still have to go to Kroger and get things that we don't get there. And I do have individuals that donate to my charity, and churches and some other organizations that do. I don't take government money typically. Because they want to tell you how to run things, and
they'll tell you how to spend it.
Yes,
right?
And I spend most of what I get on food.
Oh, gathered, yeah.
Yeah, it's when you've got 9 or 10 women in the house, and they've been drug addicts and they haven't eaten in who knows how long, and they get there and there's food. We laugh about the fact that I call it fluffing up, but they gain weight pretty quick.
Yeah.
And they have enormous appetites.
Also, no anxiety and stress on thinking on where their next meal is coming from. I'm sure there have been in situations where they don't know when they're going to eat next. They're just so broke. That alone, never mind the plumpness they're getting. Just knowing, I'm going to get my 2-3 meals today must be huge for them.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody goes hungry at my house.
What about clothing?
I've been very blessed with people that have donated clothes. And the girls, you'd think I was taking them to someplace really expensive to get clothes when people show up with things. And they really enjoy going through the clothes, trying them on, purses, shoes.
Yeah, and this gives them an opportunity because I think identity is important too. When you feel like you have nothing, no worth, just no self-identity, but then you can go through some clothes and find a shirt that you like. Now it's just like pulling it off a rack rather than just, hey, here's your new shirt. Mm-hmm. So that must be special for them.
Well, I try to make sure that they all get a haircut. Some of them had one in a very long time, and some kind of makeup, so they feel better about themselves.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of a first step. Let's see what we can do to not look like we just stepped out of the jail.
Yeah.
And so clothing and haircut, and a little makeup, it does wonders for your self-esteem.
Taking a hot shower, putting on some new threads, that does a lot, for sure. And then, of course, in the business world, as soon as you put a tie on, it changes things. You're in a different place. Yeah. So what are I'm sure there's plenty of challenges in this, but what are the biggest challenges whether it's a new woman or a resident that's been there for a minute? What are some of the common things that you're constantly having to deal with when it comes to just trying to transform these women's lives?
Unfortunately, one of the biggest issues, and I tell the ladies when I talk to them at the jail, that you have to learn to be honest. Mm. That's hard when you've lived a life of not being honest.
Very just shady and
yes.
Lying for defense.
Yes.
Lying for getting something. Yeah, I can imagine it's hard to break that.
It's a very hard habit to break, and that's a big one for me. And I've told them over and over and over again. Everybody's going to mess up.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I don't know. I'm perfect.
I mess up.
You're not perfect?
I'm pretty perfect, but
You are an angel. I mean, we can say that.
I think that I mess up. So,
sure, yeah.
But I've told them, I said, if you mess up, just come tell me. Mm-hmm. And we'll work through it, figure out how to make it not happen again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to scream and holler. I'm not going to throw you out. When they walk in that front door with me, your bad behavior doesn't just go away.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight.
Just because they get to eat good and have some nice clothes, that doesn't mean that it's going to change their character.
No.
In a deeper way. No. It helps. It's changing them. It's the process. But yeah, you're trying to break a horse, right?
Yes.
I would imagine that's very frustrating, and you must have a lot of patience.
Well, I guess some days I don't, but
because you're human.
I am. I'm human.
And what you're doing is quite fascinating and must be a lot of work.
It is. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to have one that you're trying to deal with, but when you multiply that and have 9 or 10 or 14 and all of their different issues and problems, and it's hard. Personalities.
Do you keep track of their medications?
Yes, all the medicine is locked up in my room.
So now
we have med-call.
That's another level of organization and making sure everyone gets what they need and line them up. You line them up and say it's medicine time. Yeah.
And they'll want you to give them more medicine than what they're supposed to get sometimes.
Yeah, I would gather some of the medicine is probably more narcotic based, withdrawal type of medicine like Clonopin or something, full disclosure, and I try to be vulnerable and open on my podcast. I was an alcoholic for a long time. I went to rehab in facility, so I know the lining up for the medicine and the boundaries that they give you. We had to ask permission to use the restroom, but at the end of the day, as frustrating as it was, what they're doing is they're giving you the best baseline possible so then you can start working on yourself. So I never had to worry about the food. They were holding our hands in a way, you know. And I know you're not holding their hands because you don't want to do that, but you're giving them that structure, right?
Yes.
And the guidelines.
They have to have a structure.
Yeah.
And the boundaries, and you know, they have to learn to live in that, which is something that most of them have not learned to do.
How long do they typically stay? Do you have some that's been several years, or?
I have had one girl that stayed with me for 5 years. One recently left about 6 months ago, and she had been there about 3.5. I want them to stay until they can get their fines paid off, because most of them have fines from the state.
Yep.
And, you know, it's expensive to live today anywhere, but certainly in DeSoto County. And most of them don't have much education, so you can't get a high-paying job. And if their fines are paid, that's $200 to $300 a month that frees them up to use for
They don't have to worry about it.
for food or for housing or whatever they need.
I mean, yeah, you literally, if they didn't do it that way, now they're on their own in debt. And I know all about debt. We all know about debt. It's such a weight on your life.
It is.
They don't need any more.
No.
What's the deciding factor, though? Okay, well, first, let me ask this. How are they paying their fines? So are they allowed to get a job?
They are allowed to get a job when they've been there for 6 months. The first 6 months we use for counseling and trying to get our head screwed on straight.
Plus, you're learning this person's personality,
Yes.
too. You need time to understand what they're about.
Yes, and some of them haven't been that far off from being on drugs when they get to the house. So we still have some, you know, lingering issues with their drug addiction, and nobody's going to be a good employee if they're still, you know, withdrawing.
Strung out and stuff. Yeah. So after 6 months, they can get a job, but do you transport them?
Yes.
I don't know. How do you find time to sleep?
I don't sleep a lot.
So now, and it's like, what my brain always goes to is, you think, yeah, that's a lot of work driving. It's a lot of work handling the medicine. It's a lot of work for this, that, and the other thing. But you need to be organized to stay on top of schedules and medicines and everything. So that's a whole other level, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
We meet every Sunday night together as a group, and we do it other times too. But Sunday nights are our meeting for the week, and we go over, and they have to keep up with what they've got going on. But on Sundays, we write it all down, so everybody knows who's going where Monday, who's got to go where Tuesday, and we keep a schedule. We put it on a marker board so everybody can see it. They can write it in a notebook, and I write it down so I know where all I've got to go.
Gustafson Properties. Gustafson Properties has been building beautiful custom homes in DeSoto County and surrounding areas for over 20 years. Are you ready to build your new custom home? Call us today at 662-449-6271.
5M Services, your comfort specialists. We offer heating, ventilating, and air conditioning service. Call us for any of your HVAC needs. 662-560-7331. We are here for you 24/7.
Team Couch of Birch Realty Group is a full-service team of realtors specializing in real estate sales. With over 900 transactions alone in the past 5 years, their experience is your best asset. Go to teamcouch.com or call 662-449-1700.
You know, my mother was the caretaker for my grandmother for years, and I saw the amount of work that was. But like you said, you start multiplying that by 10. Whew,
It's a lot of running.
Well, let's look at the positive. You know, I'm sure you've seen some amazing success stories in front of you and some women that really changed their lives. What are some of the key factors that the women do to really make it happen for them?
Well, the ones that are doing really well have made all the changes that I tried to show them how to do when they were at the house, such as have a quiet time in the morning, stay in church, make healthy friends, still go to CR meetings or AA meetings or whatever they need to do to stay away from that. Just change their people, places, and things.
Yeah, make different friends.
Make different friends.
Yes, absolutely. So what is the ultimate deciding factor? I would gather the women have full control. If they want to leave, they can. Is that true?
Most of them.
Yeah.
I have one there right now that's court ordered. So
interesting. So you'll get the courts on your side even.
yes.
So is that sort of make it like a halfway house?
It's not really I don't call it a halfway house, but I have had women that have been court ordered. Judge Chatham has done that with a number of women over the last few years, and they have to stay 6 months.
So obviously they trust you. I mean,
Yes.
you're in the system in some way. They're not going to let court order them to just stay anywhere.
No.
Right?
Well, I've worked for 3 attorneys here in DeSoto, actually more than that, but 3 attorneys in DeSoto County. And so I know a lot of the attorneys here and have made friends with some of the people that work in our prosecutor's office. And the judges know me. And I'm in and out of the courtroom and,
Yeah.
with
and
the
they know
girls.
they can trust you and they know what you're doing.
They know what I'm doing.
So if a woman's court ordered to be with you and then they boot and bail, that's a warrant, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I tell the girls, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, I will tell on you.
Well, yeah. But they're trusting you because the system's trusting you because they want you to report to them. If they knew that you were kind of hiding and cheating, what good would that do?
Wouldn't do any good and wouldn't teach them anything.
Yeah. Yeah, you're enabling.
Yeah.
So do you have any couple, success stories in mind, that someone that really stuck out to you that just, really pulled it together?
One of the girls that stayed with me about, oh my goodness, probably 5 years ago, she had been in the jail, and she said she wanted to change, but her parents had both had issues growing up, and she never really had a stable home environment. And so a couple of times I had to get after her a little bit, and she ended up doing really well, though. She got a job, moved out, but she was married, and they had not been married very long, and they didn't live together but 2 or 3 months, I don't think, in the beginning, and split up. And she kept telling me the whole time she was there, I need to get a divorce. And I said, well, let's pray about it. We'll just pray about it. So we just stopped, and then she left, and she came by the house one afternoon, and she said, I found him, and he says he'll sign the papers, and I want you to go with me. And I told her, well, I can't go today, but I said, I'll pray for you. So we did, and she went out there. And when she got there, he took one look at her, and he said, I don't want a divorce, and I'll do whatever you tell me, because he had a drug problem too. Mm-hmm. So, long story short, they got him help, found a place to live. I think his mama took him in. And they started coming to church where I go. And the preacher counseled with them for a year. They ended up having a renew their vow ceremony at the church, had a nice little wedding, and I went to court with her. She got custody back of her daughter, and he got more rights with his, and they both got good jobs, and they're doing really, really well. They stay in church, and they bought my house in South Haven.
Look at that.
She told people that was where she found Jesus, and that's where she wanted to raise her children. And she asked me if she could buy my house when I moved, and so I let them. So they're doing great, and I'm really proud of them. And
how long have they been married now?
About 5 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it took him surrendering in a way.
It did.
Because that was the issue, right? She's trying to man, I'm trying to shift over here and you're holding me back, but then causing issues. But good for him to be like, you know what, I got a problem too.
Yeah.
They work together. And she could have still been like, nah, but she hung it in there
Yes.
with him, and now look at them.
And they're very happy.
Yeah.
And just doing extremely well. I'm very proud of them. I have a few of those, you know, where they've just done way more than I would have even hoped for. And I had one that was the first one that Judge Chatham court ordered to my house. And I had gone to court with her that day, and I had gone and talked to him about her, and I had told him, I said, she'd already been to prison like 4 times, and she was 30 years old.
Yeah.
And I said, it's not working for her. If we're trying to rehabilitate her, that's not working. And I had listed off a whole bunch of, you know, faith-based programs long-term that I thought would be helpful. And we got to court that day, and her attorney motioned for me to come up to the front. And he said, Judge Chatham has a deal for you. He says he'll give her time served on this charge, but you have to take her home with you for 6 months. And I was like, I don't want to take her home with me. But I'm so glad I did. Yeah. And she's doing really well, too.
Yeah.
She's working down here in Hernando. She got custody back of one of her children, got married to a really nice young man. And they're doing really well, too.
Yeah, you forget about the kids. These women
Yeah.
go to prison, their mothers.
They have kids.
And that must be so difficult. And they go to jail. The child, their child is 5, and they get out and they're in high school. Mm-hmm. That's got to be so hard.
It is hard.
You know. So when you have women in your house, and even if they haven't been given custody back, are they still allowed to see their kids?
Some of them are.
And they just come over, but under your supervision?
I let families visit on Sundays. So if they're in a situation to where grandma has the baby, or, you know, aunt somebody or another, and they're willing to bring them, they can come over and visit.
Yeah. Do you give them phone time? I know there are no cells and everything, but you must give them some access to call their kids,
They
right?
get phone time for that.
Yeah. Which, yeah, makes sense. You know, it's good for the kids too to be able to talk to their mom.
Yeah.
You know, it's different with men and dads. You know, we all want to love our kids and everything, but I think it's pretty easy to say the relationship between a child and mom is a little different.
It is.
Right. I think we all know why, what's going on there. You know, and it's a much more deeper relationship. So, yeah, it's going to be hard on these kids and hard on the moms too, because I'm sure they want the best for their kids, you know, and they understand that. Unfortunately, right now there's a little neglect, but we're fixing that.
Well, the whole point is to rebuild relationships, period. First of all, they have to build one if they've never had one, you know, with the Lord. And when they get that one going, you know, it just kind of spreads out into our human relationships.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's what I desire for them, is to mend all the fences if we can.
Right. Yeah. I know there's step number 4 in AA? That's the big one. That's where you have to go on your apology tour and really mend, like you said. But with each new one, regardless if the receiver takes it, if you do your best and you just genuinely say, look, I'm sorry for wronging you this way, that, and that way, this, that, and the other. If they don't accept it, that's on them. But there's something therapeutic about that, isn't there?
It is.
So just get it off your chest and write it all down too. Yeah. So do you let's talk about journaling. Do you encourage journaling?
Yes.
Yeah.
I buy them notebooks
Yeah.
for them to journal in.
It's a huge coping skill, is journaling. My goodness. There's
have-
something about physically putting on the paper from your hand, not typing, none of that. The pen to paper. There's
Writing
something
it down.
magical about that, yeah.
I have one right now that does a really good job writing poetry. And all of hers is about her experiences, you know, over the last few years. And she does a really good job. But that's therapeutic for her.
Yeah, it's a way to process and get it out. Yeah, because therapy, you're talking, you're getting it out. That's a good skill, too. I do it. I've seen the same therapist for decades. It's awesome. But yeah, writing is the same way. It's just getting it out. Well, let's talk about how people can help, outside of you, because you need help. So if anyone, do you take donations, whether it's food, clothing,
Yes.
money? Do you take money donations?
Oh, I take money.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'll take the
Yeah,
money.
we'll take money.
Of course you need it. So how can someone help?
Well, I also need help with transportation sometimes,
That's a good point. Yep.
driving the girls different places. Because, I can't be everywhere at one time.
I mean, yeah, you need to be in 14 different places.
And I can't do that. I'm pretty good, but I can't do that. So
Would that be the biggest struggle right now is transportation?
that's a big struggle every week. And I have a couple of ladies that are really good to, devote their time to coming and helping. But sometimes it takes more than 2 or 3 of us to get them everywhere they need to go.
Because it's you and the women. Like You
Yes.
don't have any assistant working under you, and you don't have a board of directors. And you don't.
Well, I have a board of directors.
Okay, let's talk about that. So, how does that work?
There are now 9 of us, and but they're all busy with jobs and their families too. We meet usually about every 2 months and talk about things we need to do or change or
Some ideas on how to make things better.
make things better, and
Yeah.
just normal stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
Anything area that we might need help in. Funding is one of them.
So how would someone be able to donate money? How does that work?
They can. I have PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. They can write a check.
Look at you.
Yeah, we're good to go for just about anything you want to do, and it's all tax deductible. I am a 501c3 nonprofit, so you can get you can turn in with your taxes.
And so is there a website or a particular place they can go?
I do not have a website at this moment.
You are
We're
on Facebook.
working on one.
I know that, yeah.
I do have Facebook, but if you just look at whichever one of those other avenues you want to look up on Venmo or Cash App, there's under my name, you can find it. And
It's under Ann Lunceford.
yes, and I have if you just wanted to send a check, I have a P.O. Box 672 in Hernando,
Okay. The one right on Commerce Street?
right on Commerce
Right
Street.
there on Commerce Street,
Yep.
next door. Well,
Yep.
that's awesome. That's funny. Yeah, you got all the hip money apps.
Yeah.
Cash App. That's what all the kids are using. Cash App.
Well, you don't have to. You might get old, but you don't have to be old, right?
I've hired some students for some work, and I'm like, all right, I'll be paying you through PayPal, and they're like, huh? Like they don't even have it. They don't have an account. Like, can you use Cash App? Eventually, I just gave in. Okay, here's Cash App. Cash App isn't the best for a business as far as keeping up with, invoices and stuff. But anyways, it's also huge in the music world too. And with QR codes, if you see a band, they'll have a sign with QR codes to all the different apps like you just mentioned. So all you got to do is scan it and boom, you can tip them.
Yeah.
We make it simple. I'm making it simple. You got to make it. If you need money, you got to make it as easy as possible to get to you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And do you take donations, food and clothing outside
Yes.
of the different places you go?
Yes. And something that's usually needed a lot is toilet paper.
Oh, yeah, things you don't even think about. Yeah,
People-
toothpaste, toothbrushes,
yes,
all
that
toiletry
stuff.
Yeah.
Health and beauty stuff. Just any kind of toiletry. Shampoo. We go through a lot of shampoo.
I bet.
Soap.
Deodorant, everything.
Yes. Tide. You name it. We
Those are the
need
things
it.
you don't think about. I never once thought the amount of laundry detergent you must go through.
Oh, it's ridiculous
Yeah.
what we go through.
I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, your washer and dryer must be exhausted.
Well, I actually have 2 sets.
I was going to say.
They run a lot.
And then now we're talking electric bill,
Yep, got an electric bill
right?
every month.
That must be massive.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, good for you for, it seems like, yes, we want help, but it seems like even without the help, you're still managing to make it happen.
Well, God's good.
Yeah.
I've learned in my lifetime that he's dependable,
Yeah.
and he's a provider, and he does provide. He's been way better to me than I deserve.
You've seen miracles, haven't you?
Yes,
A lot of them.
yes.
Any moments where you're like, oh, where am I? How am I going to get this done? How am I going to pay this bill? But then there it is.
There it is. I never thought that I'd be living in the house I'm living in.
Yeah.
And God just gave that to me.
The 6 bedrooms, it's a big house.
Yes, it's about 5,000 square feet. And I have 2 vehicles that were donated. Didn't have to pay for them. So,
Yeah.
they're
You're doing God's work for sure.
Yeah.
This is your calling, isn't it?
very, very thankful. Homer Skelton Ford gave me a 15-passenger Ford Transit van in 2020. And Geico Insurance last July donated Nissan Pathfinder.
Look at that.
And I was very, very grateful for that. So,
Now we just got to get some drivers.
yeah, now I have to have drivers.
All right, God, you going to donate a chauffeur here?
But I stand out in my 5 acres sometimes with the chickens and the dog and the cat. And, we all make, mostly when we're disappointed, people will say, well, God's timing's perfect. Just kind of trying to make them feel better, But God's timing is perfect.
Yeah.
And he had the perfect time and the perfect place for me to have this house. And I tell people I'm living in his extravagant, lavish love, and that all things are possible. And they are, beyond anything we could ever imagine. And he wants to be good to us. And I tell those girls at the house that he wants to be good to you.
Because they probably think otherwise, right?
They do.
They think, why me?
Why
Right.
me?
Yeah.
Why'd this happen to me?
Yeah.
And they blame God.
Yeah.
And most of the time, what we blamed God for was not something he did.
Or even deny his existence.
Yes,
How can there be a God if?
yeah.
I'm sure you hear that.
I've had women there that have lost children in horrible situations. 2 of them that have been there, their children were murdered by their husbands. And just little bitty kids. I've had them have children that have. One of the girls had her oldest child in the car with her, and a drunk driver hit her from behind. And the little girl had taken her seatbelt off. And she went flying from the back seat clean out the front window and killed her. And, she was really struggling with that. She just kept telling me, I should have been able to catch her. You can't catch her. There was no way. And she was very...
Putting the blame on herself.
Yes, putting the blame on herself and wanting to know why God allowed that to happen. And, there's some things that we're never going to know the answer to. But we just have to keep trusting that he had a purpose and a plan for that.
Yeah, that's so hard to
It's hard.
put that in perspective. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And I just thought of a question that I should have asked a long time ago in this interview. And we'll cap it out here. Why did you start doing this? That's an important question. What made you decide, man, this is my life, this is my calling? How did that look? What's that story about?
My husband and I taught a single Sunday school class at a church that we were in, and years back, and 2 of the men got arrested. They weren't arrested together. It was for separate things. And I started to go visit them at the jail.
And when is this? How long?
That was like in 2007, somewhere around there. And it just, there were so many hurting people that I saw every week when I went to visit them. And I just felt like there was women that probably needed a visit that might not get some. And so I started calling the sheriff's department and asking about coming and doing a Bible study with the females. And the man that was over the jail at the time wouldn't even talk to me. He would just brush me off. And I had to go to the sheriff's office one day for the attorney I was working for, and Bill Rasco came out, and he had already been told, the attorney I was working for at the time had laughed and said that I needed to run for sheriff because I knew everybody. And so...
Hey, there's an election right now.
I know. I don't want the job. But anyway, I went in there and Bill came out and I told him, I said, I have a deal to make with you. I said, I want to do a Bible study with the women. And I said, if you'll let me do that like I want to, I won't run for sheriff and you can keep your job. And he just laughed.
You would have been elected.
I would have been elected. He'd have lost then. So he just laughed and he turned around and told the lady, find a time. Mm-hmm. And I started that next Tuesday night.
Bam.
And I've been doing it for 15 years.
Good for you.
And it was tough, you know.
Because at the time you probably had a job. You had a career. What was your career?
I was a legal assistant for an attorney.
And that's why you know so many. Yeah.
But I went in that first night and all the girls were sitting there in pink jumpsuits. Mm. And I don't know, something just tugged at my heart. And I told them that night that they were precious to me and precious to God, even in those pink jumpsuits. And, of course, as time went on, I realized they were getting out and coming right back in. Didn't take long.
I mean, the percentage of that's way higher than it should be. Yeah.
Way high. So
because they're not rehabilitating very well in there, are they?
No, they're not. Yeah. It's just a detention center, you know. So I told Sheriff Rasco that I just wanted to stop that revolving door for a few of them. And so my husband and I talked about it, and he told me one morning, we had been having our quiet time together, and he said, you know, if one of them needs a place to go, just bring her home with you.
15 years later?
Yep. So 15 years later and probably 500 plus, they've come home with me.
And I never thought that question. Over 15 years, you've touched over 500 women. Wow.
Yes. So it's been a journey, but, you know, all this time, I knew that's what God was telling me to do. Yeah. And I don't regret any of it. It's hard, and it's not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it's worthwhile.
That could easily be 1,000 kids
that got
their mom back.
It could.
You know? Well, look, I could talk to you forever. I just think this story is amazing. I'm so glad you came in here and shared it.
Well, thank you.
With me. Before I say bye and we close this, let me address the audience here. And first and foremost, thank you for listening and watching this. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. And so I encourage everyone to share. If you could share this episode, you'll see clips on our socials. Share, like, comment. Spread the word for Ann, which then helps this podcast, which then helps more guests like Ann. Full circle is helping this community. And with that, I want to thank our sponsors, because that's a big deal for me and this podcast and this studio that we get to do this in. Talking about being blessed, you know, I was blessed with some sponsors, not knowing how to get sponsors. And I'm happy to say we have 8. So I'm going to thank all of them right now. We got Wesley Meadows, Retirement Community, Gustafson Properties, 5M Services, Team Couch of Birch Realty, Wild Cultures Sourdough, the DeSoto Arts Council, Brandon Vandenberg from Shelta Insurance, and Boba Cream. Thank you all for everything you do to help this. And I hope you understand that you're helping the community as well doing that. But there's always, need for more. I'm not saying this is a nonprofit. It's hard for me to say that. This is a business here. I'm not a nonprofit. But I'm trying to fuel the fire and continue to tell these stories. So if you want to click that sponsor link in the description to figure out how you can possibly sponsor, that'd be awesome too. Go to therealhernando.com for all the information. And thanks again for being here for your second time.
Thank you.
And I think mine was better than Coach's, right?
Probably.
But again, for those who are watching and listening, thank you for being here and have a great day.